occupies a pivotal role in today's economic situation, serving as a backbone for what we call today India's growing economy. India today is the fifth largest GDP in the world, and that is to be number 3 in the next 6 years. The discussion today will start from the trends that we have in the session and will move on towards how these businesses are today moving towards technology, towards sustainability, and at the end, we would want to understand if the direction that we have taken as a country, as professionals, is in the right pivotal direction that we see. So before we do anything else, may I have a round of applause for all the people, all the esteemed panel that we have here on the dais. May I also request everybody who is in audience today to have your questions, but keep it for the end of the discussion. We'll leave 5 to 10 minutes based on the discussion flow, and then you are free to ask the question either to the panel itself or to individual panelists. Both are okay. Please note down your comments, note down your queries, and we'll be happy to answer those. Now, gentlemen, we all know what is happening cross-border, but the trends, the drivers, the things are something which we are all looking forward to, whether it is going to impact us positively or negatively. My first few points to the panelists today is what are the trends specifically to cross-border e-commerce that you have seen in your own businesses and the other businesses that you are linking, and how do you see it changing the landscape for the country in the coming 5 to 10 years? May I start this discussion with Mrs. Raghavan, if it is okay, and then everybody can chip in wherever.
Yeah, so I think very relevant question. So what is the contemporary thing happening in the cross-border trade? So I'd just like to begin with the ecosystem in India. India is looking up to expand its foothold in the international market. So we are talking about 5 trillion economy. We are talking about countries getting relegated in terms of their GDP. So lately we have seen Germany taking over Japan in terms of GDP and things like that. And with the current government, having ambitious task of progressing our economy to a higher pedestal, I think it's more important to see what we are able to grasp from the happenings in the international market, basically. So the current trends are moving towards sustainability, basically. Second, it's in terms of how we are able to adapt to the technology. So technology is the seamless link between trade, between the government and the private sector. So whereby, very important aspect here is how we are able to adapt to technology in terms of building up, number 1, resilience, number 2, transparency, and third and most of all, how we are more agile in conducting our businesses. So the agility part comes in terms of how swiftly we are able to move towards adapting to the international ecosystem, trade ecosystem. So from that perspective, the government is doing much in this regard. So the kind of initiatives taken by the government in terms of Gati Shakti, in terms of ULIP based interface between the trade and the government portals, so not in terms of only logistics, in terms of the regulatory aspects, in terms of most of all, we should not be considering anything in terms of the regulation. We talk about ease of doing business, because unless you create an ecosystem whereby trade moves freely, so we are not going to progress. Basically, because world is looking up to us in terms of what is our rating in terms of ease of doing business. So to that extent, all these technological efforts which come into intertwining various aspects of doing business, cross-border trade and domestic trade as well, so easing how we are able to is the way we import things, how we are able to export things with, actually not much of a hindrance and things like that. So, uh, we are to set benchmark with best international trade practices. So, to that extent, we have a lot of mile to cover in that aspect. So, government is doing enough in terms of that. I think in the coming years, maybe around 3 to 4 years, we can see a lot of change in terms of what the government has been taking initiative on and how we are able to capitalize on these things. So, to sum it up, I would say agility, transparency, and the regulatory aspects, how we are able to take care of. These will be the three cornerstones how the country is moving towards putting our foothold in terms of facilitating ease of business. Yeah.
Because we come from a critical background, Mr. Nikhil, I would like to go to this question. When people think about cross-border reforms, what they think about this? But if you look at India or any other economy, we reach statistics of cross-border is nothing more in terms of value than it is. And people often overlook how you see that system in the past and how it will happen.
Thank you, Rituraj, and I really appreciate the question that has been put forward on it. First of all, I would like to start with a thanks to Radhika for getting the panelists aligned towards it, because it's been a really tough task for getting the panelists together on that front. So it's been a great task, and I also congratulate the team, Mrs. Stuttgart, to get this platform for all of us in order to be around as a knowledge sharing team on it. Uh, to say about myself, I would say I am Anand Iyer. I represent a company which is generally termed as a trusted partner in energy transition. So we are in the space of energy, right from generation to the dissipation of energy in a right form. So the question that is posed by Rituraj to me make a lot of relevance to it in the international trade when we talk about. So when we say it's an e-commerce platform, in e-commerce everything talks about speed. And when we look at the cargo that we are handling, the speed for us at times 50 kilometers per hour itself is a great speed for us to achieve. That's how we would say, because the kind of nature of business that we are in, many of our cargoes are of over-dimensional nature, wherein the speed matters a lot. And to the point what Rituraj had specifically asked in terms of B2B, what are the evolving trends that are happening in it and what are the differences that are happening in it as compared to e-commerce, I would say e-commerce is picking up very fast. Lot of digital initiatives are happening with respect to e-commerce on it. However, from the trade side, on the international side, when we look into the points that needs to be touched base upon, had picked up the pace, but not to the extent of that of e-commerce. That is something which somebody has to relevantly look into. Many of the companies, say my co-panelists like Vivek had been here on, they have come up with a lot of initiatives on that side. Multiple digital initiatives are coming in. 3 points that I would like to say and would like to quickly sum it up on that is: one, as Mr. Raghavan said, transparency is the key, and I generally tell my team the same thing. 3 things on which we as a logistics B2B company operate, or anyone on that front, is: one is transparency, second is responsiveness, and the third is speed for us. Because speed anyway we will catch up, but unless and until there is an absolute transparency and there is an absolute responsiveness coming up, the speed might not be up to the mark on it. So how is it that we are picking up on the speed? Depending upon the transparency and responsiveness is something that I would like to highlight. How we can do that is primarily on 2 fronts. One, picking up the right documentation that is required to be done in international logistics, because this documentation becomes the base for everything. Speed many a time becomes a bottleneck for a good documentation, or an escape for a good documentation, which should not be the case. Because right now the international trade, every country, everybody across the globe is looking at more of a protectionism kind of environment than that of a globalization kind of environment. The sentiments with respect to geopolitics is changing, wherein any documentation error at one point of time get put your consignment to a very challenging task. And the groundwork that happens for something from the B2B business, say from the engineering sector or from the high-end engineering fabrication sectors are very different. So some points needs to be noted, but the key things that I would like to give you as an input is documentation to the core, and then looking at the complete end-to-end activity, right from generation of a logistics lead in terms of giving a supply to something, engineering not like earlier days where we used to manufacture something and then we used to look at how is that we will transport it on that front. Now we have to look at how we will transport it, and basis that how we are designing our instrument, so equipments, so that it becomes easy for transportation. So these are the few things which one need to look into, and as I said, end to end, right from generation of a lead from the sales perspective till the closure of it from the regulatory aspect. I would just quickly touch upon wherein from the international trade perspective, the EDPMS and the IDPMS reconciliations which are required to be done on the regulatory part are the key, and no one should miss out on that front. Many of the startups are around what I have seen who are venturing into the area of international trade and logistics. Please be very thoughtful when you are venturing it out in terms of what kind of risk that you are pertaining to it. As I said, speed should be the third part. One should be transparency, second should be responsiveness, and then should be speed. Reason, compliances are getting driven to a very different level when we talk about the overall operations in India. And why I am saying this again is because India is an evolving sector where globally team is looking up from India as a competition perspective. And on that front, we have to be very strong in all our aspects in order to put it forward. I'll not take too much of time. There are too many other points also which we'll come back on it. But these are the few cursory points which I wanted to highlight it to the team. Thanks, Ritu. Over to you now. Thanks.
Thank you, Rituraj, for giving us this opportunity to be present here and discuss our insights on the how cross-border e-commerce and B2B is being portrayed across the world from Indian side. So, see, first I would like to give a light on how Amazon, Walmart, Flipkart, all these bigger marketplaces, in fact, for Etsy, eBay, have entered into the Indian market and facilitating the B2C revolution of the India for the world. So if we talk about the China story, of course, there was Alibaba already existing. So Amazon, Walmart are now looking India as an opportunity to get across all the handicraft, jewelry and other segments into the global market. So if I talk about how Amazon or Walmart, for that matter, is facilitating the Indian trade, is that first of all, they are providing a global reach into the international markets. So it has now become so easy, I would tell, that for a small exporter who has just a bandwidth of say 1 lakh rupees or has invested then 1 lakh rupees into the business to get into the international market, which was not possible 5 years or 7 years ago. And that is being made possible just because technology has been able to enter into the deep pockets of India and to the tier 2, tier 3 cities of India. That revolution has also been, of course, influenced by the geo revolution of the India. So I would obviously say that e-commerce is the next big thing towards which India should focus. Why? Because it would obviously be so we say that it is a bridge to get into the B2B segment of the exports side, and it is very easier for the small exporters to enter into the global market. without any much investment. So how these platforms or how technology is investing is that, so there is a warehouse in USA. You get direct access to what is happening in that USA warehouse, Japanese warehouse, or say UK warehouse, and an exporter sitting in India exactly knows with the help of Amazon and Walmart that, okay, this particular product is being shipped from here till here. So the analytics part and the insight part is very important in analyzing how well the B2C is playing out its role into the deeper pockets of the India. Plus, another advantage which I see the B2C facilitating is that cross-border payments for me and for I think all would be agreeing is a major challenge for everyone across the world. So the Amazon or the Walmart, and in fact for that matter PayPal or Pioneer for that matter, there are many other players I see every day coming across and booming in India, which are making the payments also very easier. So that payment infrastructure plus the logistics infrastructure which the government is focusing on, the CSB5 mode, so I'll come across CSB5 a little later also. The CSB5, the payment infrastructure and the logistics infrastructure along with the discoverability platform of the world are making it easier for the India to grow and get across multiple markets. So as of now, we know exporters who don't just start from a single country, which was a challenge earlier for a B2B exporter that, okay, you first explore US market, you enter deep into the US market and then grow. Now, at a given moment, I have seen smaller exporters operating in say 10 markets across the world, which is US, Japan, UK, Europe. So that has made it easier because the ticket size is smaller. I am selling a 5,000 to 50,000 product. So it is easier to ship, it is smaller in size, and it is it requires less compliance. What Mr. Iyer was talking, that B2B requires a little bit more compliance and understanding, but CSV5 as a mode of faster clearance for the market has made it easier to get to 10 markets at a in a say span of 1 year, and then explore those 10 markets. In whichever market your product is growing, you can then focus on that and deep down on that. So I think technology as an enabler, it still has a long way to grow on the government side also, because the customs are now trying to be digitalized to the end that so I have seen pre-clearances happening even before the shipment reaches the custom house. So that is very important on the government part, plus enablers like us, enablers like PAAPOS, Amazon, Walmart, which are making it easier for the logistics and the discovery of the products across the world. So that's my input on the e-commerce and technology part.
The reason why we have this panel today is also because all of them are different aspects of the radar. We have people where the shipment lead time might be a couple of days, but there's also people where it is an 8-month long period in terms of project development. So my next question is to Mr. Kamat, you. The other panelists should also add in here. What we want to know that transparency, especially in terms of the business, is becoming more and more important because it's always relevant. Now, in India at least, when we talk about technology, we talk about machine technology. How that has changed from machine technology to process technology is where SAP is doing a lot of good work. So maybe we want to know from you how is this changing in terms of the process optimization, and also how is it changing the responsiveness and the accessibility part of our business.
Sure. Thanks, Rituraj. I think one of the key things when I get into this is why we are asking, why we are talking about all of this, right? So one of this reason is two sectors. I think both representatives are here. E-commerce has grown like anything. And second one is, of course, the manufacturing sector. So we have seen the huge demand happening. Of course, it is also related to the government strategies around Make in India. It is all looking at a logistics unified portal. And of course, the China Plus strategies have helped us, right? So there is a huge demand. And there are enterprise customers like we have Raymond's and Thermax, but there are a lot of smaller customers, which we call the mid-market customers, which are growing in numbers, right? Their volumes are growing. They are acquiring plants across the globe as well. And there is where the volume has been also driven. The problem here is, and I think the panel did speak about transparency, speed, compliance, sustainability. A lot of these are regulatory, a lot of these are visibility. and this is driving a lot of challenges in terms of penalties and many other things, right? Now, how do I get a visibility into that? Today, typically, when it comes to SAP, everyone thinks SAP is my core, it's my ERP. But then there are other softwares which give you some instantaneous data, but that entire data is never integrated in one single system. So the question comes is, I use SAP as my core, as an ERP. How can I, just using my SAP system, have a real-time insight in terms of an end-to-end visibility about my shipment, right? So what I will do is, to address this, I'm going to play a AV right now and then just summarize it. Can we play the AV1? Okay, fine. So this is where we collaborate everything in one single system.
How we use intelligent insights to monitor, manage and streamline our supply chain execution in a real-time manner. Bob is a global logistics operations manager. He does most of his job in logistics execution insights. Let's open the app to see what it looks like. The map view visualizes the real-time location tracking of shipments and the overall status of various types of locations, like a warehouse or a plant. If you are new to logistics execution insights, you may need to expand the legend area to identify all the objects and their status on the map. The legend items are intuitive enough, aren't they? Here, you can also do some filtering. Bob folds it up for now, as he needs to use an important feature.
It's more of a real-time monitoring.
He clicks this button to launch real-time location tracking. This updates the location of all vehicles at a pre-configured interval. Did you see that? The little icon's moving. Whoops, it's turned orange. That means the shipment is delayed. Now Bob has to check the detailed information on this shipment. That's easy, just a simple click. Nice. The vehicle comes to the center of the screen, and the side pane shows him all he needs: the shipment stage info, voyage number, and the related freight booking. He can click the freight booking link to see more
and this is your shipment ID on your ERP.
And there he gets the contact number of the driver. Maybe he'll give the driver a call.
There was something was a
Linda is a regional logistics operation manager.
Which can be also attached.
Just like Bob, she uses logistics execution insights
On top
a lot.
you can see
These charts and dashboards tell her everything about the shipments and distribution centers in the region she manages. She can identify delayed shipments and check the detailed info on a specific delay. She can view shipment statuses for each milestone, or quickly jump to another app to create a doc appointment for the shipment.
So if you're working with a warehouse and something has to go there, you have to create an appointment directly with the warehouse provider so that your shipments are taken straight away.
Delayed activities are highlighted on the screen. The map view is also a great tool for her. There, she can intuitively see where a shipment is, filter shipments by status, check how the distribution center is going,
So this is an example of going online with the warehouse operator, with the carrier, with
track
the
a
shipper,
specific order by search,
getting real-time insights.
and of course view any of the details of the order if needed.
Yeah, thank you. So I think this is just an insight for you of how the entire thing gets real-time connected. Today, a lot of these things are happening in silos. You don't get a real-time visibility. And as I said, as the volumes increase, all these siloed operations needs to be integrated to have one view in one system itself, right? Yeah, that maybe is a short answer for your question.
Kamat was talking about e-commerce and then bulk cargo movement. So I think I'll give you a small example of how it operates in fashion market. So we're talking about customized garmenting. Customized garmenting is made to measure, where typically you walk into a store, so you give your measurements, and then actually the tailor, Darji, he comes, he tells you come in 20 days and collect your garments. So the power of technology here basically is we have typically large retail format stores in the US and Europe have anywhere between 800 to 1600 stores across the continent, US for instance. So this particular technology, how it makes things easier for a consumer, end consumer in the US is basically, typically I walk into a store in New York, I go to a retail format store, I give my measurement, body measurement. Even body measurement is, it is automated. Physically, you need not take a tape and then do that. You have a body scanner. It's a three-dimensional body scanner. It just goes there, you go there, and then it gets captured into your system, the retail format store's ERP system. And then there is a process of consolidation which is happening. Process of consolidation is basically that all the 1600 stores across US, they consolidate it in a form where it stores in a repository and then it converts into a XML format, and overnight it gets transmitted to a plant in Bangalore. I'm talking about Raymond factory in Bangalore. So this is just to give a sense of what technology can do. So I'm talking about a baseline where I go to a store, give my measurement, wait for 20 days, go back, again I give a trials, it is not okay, it is for a marriage or some function, so it is not okay, so again I give another 1 week's time. So typically it takes about a month's time for me to get a garment done for my D-Day, you know. So, but here the technology plays a very important point where everything gets converted into an XML format. It comes and sits right into my system in factory in Bangalore, and then there is a process of automation being carried out in my plant where I give a real-time visibility of my inventory to each of the stores in the US, meaning that actually it's a centralized system. There is a central logistics team of this retail format store organization in the US. So they consolidate all these requirements and then they give the styles. Each of these styles are certain standardized styles, and you can do a kind of customization done there. So the moment that it does, within 3 days, it is turned around. So coming to the eco space of manufacturing, what happens again? So we have to run very fast. Within 3 days, we have to turn around end to end, right from start of the cutting operation in a garmenting to the shipping operation. So even this is automated because we'll have to see that the production stream, the value chain is first in, first out. So there is a color coding done in the manufacturing process. Within 4 days, it is turned around. And now shipping it to the retail customer. Unlike in e-commerce, so what we have is something which is quasi e-commerce kind of a thing, B2B. This is B2B. It is not a B2C, it is a B2B. But ultimately, it goes to the customer. B2B2C is what we are talking about. There is something which is a new concept which has come up, B2B2C, whereby the courier company has a process of consolidating these shipments, and then there are airway bills assigned to each of the 1600 stores. And then finally, each of the 1600 stores, if you have to ship it individually, it costs a fortune. So what they do is that they again consolidate. There is something called a baby airway bill, and then all consolidated into a master airway bill, and then it is palleted together. It goes to a hub. So DHL is our partner. So it goes to Leipzig. From Leipzig, it goes to Cincinnati. From Cincinnati, it gets moved to all these individual retail centers. The power of technology is that in India, if I have to go to a retail store and wait for 20 days or 1 month to get my garment, customized garment done. So the technology has enabled me to have the garment in New York to my store at New York within 10 days flat from the day I order. I customize it and I get it back. That's the power of technology today. So this talks about the agility part which I was talking about at the initial stage. What agility? How we are able to capitalize on the technology in order to derive the benefits of technology. Yeah.
Thank you there. talking about the trade or if we are talking about the regulatory guidelines on both sides. So what I want to ask next, and probably this is a question to Mr. Iyer, how to see that government has been able to actually move, and then this is also what I want to ask you, sir, Mr. Raghavan, that in terms of the American or the German, because the new policies coming in, and there also is a problem that India is facing because there is a clear difference in terms of the standards set by the European or the American countries and in India. Whether we are talking about sustainability, for example, scope 1, 2, and 3. Now, if we are talking about scope 3 companies, it also entails your customers and your vendors. How do you align all this together? And where, because one of the things you said earlier, that government is doing a lot, but is this not enough? This is our question for the day, which we would think about, and this is the most important aspect for a lot of people, that whether whatever is being done is enough, or where are the chances, where are the challenges.
So, Rituraj, to touch base upon this, the question that you had asked, I would say government had been working on what we call it as ease of doing business, and we had seen that over a period of time there has been a considerable improvement under this terminology of word ease of doing business. And in this ease of doing business, what government is saying is less of governance, more of a compliance. And over here, the drift has moved from government to work on compliance to more on the importers and exporters to work on compliance. So the ownership has drifted from one place to the other. Government says these are the regulatory norms which you have to comply to. If you follow this, we will not be behind you. In case if you are not complying to any of these standards, we are there to question you. What is the reason? What is the aspect? Why under which we should not question you. So this area in terms of ease of doing business is putting lot of stress on the importers and exporters in terms of compliance. And this point I have been telling it in most of the forums and other stuff is something that every importer and exporter has to look upon. Days were there when it was completely driven by sales and other front at one point of time. Now the businesses are getting driven more with respect to the compliant mindset, and how is it that within the compliance mindset the businesses can grow to the next level. So the platform has become compliance right now to a great extent. So when we talk about compliance, I would say documentation again is the key for anything and everything that we do. In the documentation, I would say make it very clear in terms of the item description, in terms of the HS code, in terms of the quantity, unit of measure, and then subsequently the kind of parties that you are involved in. As far as B2C is concerned, there might not be too much of challenge, but yes, the challenge would be primarily with respect to the HS code. There is no space for ignorance right now. There was a point where we used to say humse galti ho gaya. Now if you say there is a galti ho gaya, you will get penalized for something. So be ready for a penal action. So do the groundwork appropriately when we are trying to establish any of the organization, when you are trying to do the product classification and others thing. Second thing, as India is evolving as an export market over a period of time, and you would have seen in the last 3-4 years, India is evolving as one of the defense export market too. So globally, India is being looked up in a very different perspective, where the export control norms and the compliances has to be exponentially followed to a very different level, wherein the regulatory norms also ask for whatever product that you manufacture, what is the end use of that product at one point of time is going to be the key thing that it gets driven. In India per se, many of the businesses say मैंने बनाया, मेरे को पैसा आया, मैंने दे दिया, उसके आगे वो क्या करता है उससे मुझे मतलब नहीं है. That ideology has to change now. You should know what the product that you are manufacturing and what is the end use of that product, what it is getting into. So this is something which is getting driven to the next level, and this again has become a base for compliance. So be very thoughtful in order to do it. And as he said, as any organization on that front, under ease of business, documentation key, in order to documentation, how is it that you are keeping the documentation for your records and then subsequent reconciliation? Under ease of doing business, there are different schemes which had come up like AEO and other things, wherein under AEO, government is saying all responsibility on you. You decide, you do it depending upon tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. There are multiple opportunities that are given, and government says every 3 years or every 5 years I'll come to an audit to you. And in that audit, which is primarily a premises based audit, lot of requirements are being, and आपने 5 साल में क्या business किया है, they will come and dig you up on that front. So under that, one has to be prepared for it that जो transaction मैं आज कर रहा हूँ, 5 साल बाद मैं उसको कैसे explain करूँ. So be very thoughtful on all this aspect, and which is going to make a lot of relevance as we go forward in the international trade and business. And one more point that I wanted to touch upon, sorry that I am taking a bit of time, but I just thought these are the cursory things that one should be looking at it, is along with this documentation, the speed and transparency, as we are saying. Under the protectionism part, when we are looking at it, it's just not the execution. Logistics में हम कोई भी चीज कहीं से भी कहीं पे भी भेज सकते हैं. There is no way that we can be stopped on that front. But is it getting completely regularized in the system in a proper manner is something that you should look upon, because every execution that you do gets also with respect to the payment that you receive it at your end, and whether that payment that you receive it is compliant, is being received in a proper manner, and other stuff also the due diligence has to be done appropriately. So I will just stop here, and these are the cursory points under ease of doing business. An individual or the businesses has to take care of it to the next level. Thank you, Rituraj.
Yeah, so every compliance in a structured manner, actually, let me tell you how the country has moved from control to facilitation. So earlier, typically, if you see the Foreign Trade Office, it was called Joint Controller of Import and Export. So Controller of Imports and Exports. So later, government wanted to be more outward looking, so they said the Joint Controller of Exports and Imports. So initially we had a balance of payments problem, so they were controlling the imports. Then exports were not given thrust, but control was in containing the imports. Now later the government started giving more thrust for exports, so that's why it became Joint Controller of Exports and Imports. Then later it got migrated to the policy which said that actually it became foreign trade policy. So now if you can see, the transitioning happen here is rather from a control, it is moving towards facilitation, trade facilitation. So where there is going to be relaxation in the policies, there has to be adequate controls, because government is in the job of generating revenue for certain community initiatives to run the country, to have certain revenue from the taxation. Incidentally, indirect taxation, customs duty, GST, and all these things forms a major part of the government's revenue generation. So government needs to have certain controls on these things. So in terms of that, while they are giving a trust-based policies in terms of AEOs, they're talking about AEOs is where actually you are giving almost like a green channel facility, although it's yet to take, yet to mature. AEO program is yet to mature to the extent that it is being implemented in advanced countries. So if you look at advanced countries, in the US typically within 1 day green channel the goods go, and it's all based on the risk management. So we have in our customs, IceGate has something called risk management system, RMS system. RMS system, what it does is basically they try to categorize the risk proportion of various kinds of imports and exports. So the controls are more where they perceive the risk to be more. There the sampling, investigation, not investigations, the controls where which establish in terms of procedural aspects are a bit higher, but by and large on a risk management system, so everything goes through green channel. So this is the way they do it, but that it comes with a rider. What is a rider is basically that they can go after you anytime because they are working on a trust-based system. So you'll have to keep all your, as Anand was saying, you'll have to be very clear in how you're maintaining documentation. So as per the audit protocols, you are supposed to keep it for 8 years. So your documentation and the preservation of these documents at any point in time has to be retrievable in the format. So that is the key. Even in the US, when you're going there, where you're trying to take certain duty exemptions because of these free trade agreements and things like that, so there can be an audit trail. So the key to this is basically that rather than being reactive to the customs, you have to be proactive in terms of trying to preempt what kind of questions can be asked tomorrow by customs, just in case that they would like to investigate on things. So you will have to be well informed into type of documentation you will have to carry about, and then based on that you preserve the document in a sequential manner. At call you should be able to give it rather than taking more time, because that's where the suspicion comes from the customs. So the key to this is well organized way of maintaining your documentation, number one. And two, very important, is how you are going to have your audit protocols within the organization. So every organization would have a separate set of requirements and the way they do conduct the business. So but then I think that many organizations will not have the wherewithal and expertise to form their audit protocols. I think we have a lot of companies like the Big Four is also one of these who maintain the compliance, like EY, Deloitte, and these people come into it. You give your requirement to the agencies, you outsource the audit trail. Outsource meaning that we don't have the compliance to be outsourced. The structure in which the audit has to be carried out is being outsourced to these companies, but the internal working based on the guidance, there is an audit protocol for each of the points, they would try to maintain controls, so you start following strictly. So you will be guided by an outsourcing agency, but you fall in line with the protocols driven by this. This is the key to maintaining compliance at a higher level. So this is one of the keys in case that we have to continue our, the facilitation that the government is giving. So we need to be better having a controls internally and then be prepared for answering rather than being reactive. Key is being proactive. Yeah.
So my next question is to Mr. Kamat. Also on the same topic, we are moving about reactive to proactive. But then think from a perspective of a small organization in India, and we don't want to know how a company can have success implementing it. So it will make sense for us and the audience to know examples of how you or your company or the company you are known to, they have made successful cases of global crisis and still being able to capture it. For example, right now there was COVID 3 years back. Right now there are wars going on. How do you make sure that this reactive to proactive is also implemented in terms of what is happening at the macro level? And how do you implement it in success?
Right. And it's a pretty good question, because a lot of insights coming from panel talk about how do I do this? Government regulations are changing. It's not just Indian government, but the global government regulations are changing. There's a lot of push on sustainability factors and many other things, right? One of the other challenges also has been around the efficiency part of it. Visibility, we spoke about Panama Canal things, Suez Canal things, and not just them. Look at if your ship is traveling and there is a tornado or there is a storm happening, the ports, there is a strike at the port. These all things are not under your control. But what is important for a lot of companies is, how do I get access to all of this? Information is always on the system, right? We all use internet. At any point of time, there are alerts happening on the internet. And this comes back to something which has always been spoken about but never seen in systems, is something we call the big data, right? Some port in some country is getting closed. You have no idea till the shipper or carrier tells you, maybe after a couple of days. But that information is reported on the local internet news, right? Internet is anyways the news channel now, the news and media channel. Can I get an immediate alert that any information about a particular port, if there is a strike, if it is going to get closed for whatever flooding reason or whatever, can it come to me in real time through internet itself? So I can take visibility of it. Now you spoke about a small manufacturer in India doing a lot of export shipments, 60 to 70%. How do they get access to all of this, right? And this is where SAP, being a global company, is providing solutions. You just saw an example on the video. So do we develop all of these? No, the answer is no. A lot of this information is provided by what we call the visibility partners, right? There are a lot of partners who will give you information about some of the dynamic things, which like the weather alerts and many other alerts, right? Again, coming from the big data aspect. Some of the partners will tell you or capture the movement of the ship. You just saw on the video that it turned from green to mustard color and it may turn into red. There may be certain challenges, but this is something a visibility player is giving us. So what we have done is we have done tie-ups with a lot of these visibility players. So at any point of time, even a small manufacturer doesn't have to worry about how do I get access to this information. Coming back to the compliance part, it is a global compliance. Companies are regulatory change challenges are happening, and this is where SAP, being a global company, has incorporated all the global country compliance rules and all for checks, so that you are assured that as a checklist, okay, I'm shipping something out. This is my checklist, which is predefined as a template for this country, right? Have I done this? And this checklist it's not just about you filling up this checklist. It's the players, the collaborative players in the collaboration, right? And this is where simple answer is we give a portal where a carrier can come in, a freight provider can come in, you can come in. Certain checklists are required by the freight provider to be filled up, documentation, certain things are by you. So you at any point of time can run analytics on that and say, what is incomplete, what is complete, are you compliant? And another factor is sustainability. So the biggest challenge is how do I capture my emissions and all, right? Who will give it to me? Is there a standard method? Again, the sustainability thing is a moving thing. Lot of questions comes into how do I calculate this? Can in the interim someone give me a real-time information about my scope 3 emissions and all, right? So this is where we are tied up with one of the partners who provides you scope 3 emissions if the carrier doesn't have it, right? And it's a real-time information. At least there is a start somewhere. So even a small manufacturer can get access to all of this information because now they are accessing a system which is global in nature, compliance in nature, and we are doing a global tie-up with a lot of these visibility players also.
Hello. Yeah. So you touched upon the point that all these crises happening, COVID, Red Sea crisis right now, how they are impacting the overall global supply chain. So I think after COVID, most of the importers and the businesses around the world has learned that fact that China plus one approach has to be taken at all times in the future. So now the shift from China to say Vietnam or India or Bangladesh for that matter is, I think, an opportunity rather than, I would say for the world it might be a cost to it, but for India it is right now after COVID it is an opportunity to grow. Why? Because of course China plus one, India can be a pro leader and a big facilitator in providing good services to the worldwide organization. But I think apart from compliance, India also need to a little bit work on the infrastructure level, which we are talking about. Because if I talk about the vision which India is having, it's great. But on the execution level, India is still just 0.45% of the global supply chain value. So the transshipment hubs which the India should have are still a longer dream for the Indian exporter. And overall, if I talk about so we came to know that Adani is trying to create a port in Kerala, transshipment port. We are also discussing the freight corridor in India. So these infrastructure have to be taken up to a faster extent so that people across the world can reap the benefits of the Indian manufacturing and the Indian mindset in global supply chain value. So yeah, we have still have a long way to go. So all of us talked about the compliances, but infrastructure also has a very important and pivotal role to play if we want to play a major role in China plus one approach, where India comes on top of the global supply chain value.
Now, because we promised our audience that we will be 5 minutes from now, this is going to be my last question to the panel, and then we will open it to everybody else. Now, in trade service, all know that China is called the dragon or US is called the eagle. India has traditionally been called the elephant. A lot of potential, but not able to move fast or not able to jump. you look at what has happened in the last 2 years, we are now calling it the decade of India, the stride of the elephant. How do you see this as something which is very positive, or it is something which is overstated? And also with this point, I would like all of you, especially everyone here, to have a short concluding remark from your side with respect to where you see India in the next 5 years, especially with respect to trade, commerce, and cross.
I'm an optimist. I think like the country is moving faster, moving towards progress, and then we have to take over. I think Prime Minister has said that we will be the third largest economy in the world. So I think how swiftly we are able to move is dependent on our agility again. I come back to agility and resilience always. Actually, in terms of agility, unless we are able to adapt to the customer's needs. So customer centricity has to be the core of India's business ecosystem. So in terms of customer centricity, actually, in case we are not able to swiftly move towards how the customer needs it, how you are tailoring your product offerings, how you are tailoring your logistics to meet the customer's requirement. Today the customer needs everything at his fingertips, so because he is responsible to his organization and he needs everything at his. So again there the first 3 words, actually it's not buzzword, basically again transparency. So transparency has to be established in terms of what we are doing. Gone are the days where I try to keep my business interest in mind and try to see that it is it's a seller's word. It is no more a seller's word. We are in the buyer's world and we need to heed to the customer's request, come what may. Go to the extent of seeing even at a cost and optimizing my profitability, EBITDA and things like that. So how do I safeguard my EBITDA so also meet the customer's requirement is in terms of how I am able to innovate. Innovate again, technology comes into play here. So as far as logistics is concerned, it is a minuscule part of your customer centricity, but then it is taking center stage. Supply chain is taking the center stage basically because in the last 2-3 years, if you see, actually most of them are talking about supply chain. Going from a primitive economy to an advanced economy, so how it migrates into a service oriented industry is basically first they build the manufacturing base. So you become a manufacturing base from an agrarian country to a manufacturing. China, how did it become a big behemoth is basically because they built infrastructures in manufacturing. How did they build infrastructure in manufacturing? They were swift in adopting technology. India has not come up to that extent in adopting to technology. I was just seeing one of the ports in China which has everything is automated. Not a single person you see in the port, ICD port, actually you see everything is automated. So this kind of large scale automation is the only way forward for us. So unless we get into these things, I think we have no future. Probably countries are overtaking us in terms of many of the initiatives which technology has adopted. We are a software power. So that software power is basically the nerve of technology build-up that we can capitalize on. So when we are talking about Bangalore as the California of the US, so most of the back-end work for the US economy is supported by India. So that being the case, it is a concluded portion that actually we are able to capitalize on this and then see that all these forward-looking technology initiatives are adopted in our manufacturing process. We are talking about Industry 4.0, we are talking about Industry 5.0. What are all these initiatives in order to be agile, in order to be resilient in the face of the adversities that we come across? I think since 2009 we have come across various kind of disruptions that we have seen in the past, starting off with the pandemic. So how are we resilient? So I'll give you a fair example of how we have been able to weather the rigors of this pandemic is basically because we are into the manufacturing of men's formals, suits. So there was time when about a month or so the government didn't allow manufacturing units to function. So we were quick to adapt because the PPEs, the aprons for the medical fraternity was something which was related to our industry because we are in the stitching, darji ka kaam hai hamara. So we adapted to it, so we were resilient. We were able to generate the cash flow for about 2 months in order to see that we are able to support the operators. We are employing around some 8,000 employees, operators in the factory. Where does the revenue come from unless you are able to do some innovative ways of running the business and keeping the boat afloat? So this talks about the resilience. So you'll have to come out with a lot of innovative ideas. Technology adoption is a preeminent or a prerequisite for staying afloat, and the government is doing enough. So this ULIP based initiative that the government has come. So you have a legacy ERP system. So, but that's not enough. That only can keep you in MIS within internally. But then how do you create a faster movement to the external world is based on certain legacy softwares, which can be linked to the government is no more confined to keeping its software to themselves. They are opening up their software to be linked or integrated to the private sector so that the movements are seamless. The ULIP based systems are quite seamless. And then the tracking system, what Kamat was talking about, it is one of the areas where you can provide linkages internationally. So these are the modern concepts which I think we need to adapt, and it is a prerequisite in order to stay afloat. We get into these things, move faster in innovation, and see that we stay agile.
Thanks, Sampath, touching upon most of the point on it. Quickly on the point what Rituraj had said, I would like to give it. See, India is an elephant, what is being said. India need to move fast is something is what is expected. What is required to do so. So the word Vikasit Bharat, which is being said and coined for 2047 is being looked up in a big way. And I see it in a very, very positive manner because the way we are looking at it, what is it that we have to achieve it is something that we need to work upon on it. That is being the management philosophy, that is being the individual's improvement philosophy that it works upon. So that helps in a big way. Second thing, as far as an elephant need to move or a herd of elephant need to pass through, how fast it needs to be. There are two things. One is the health of the elephant and the second one is the environment under which the elephant can move and what kind of freedom is being given. So under these two philosophy, when I am looking at it from the government perspective, there are a lot of good initiatives happening. Health of the companies are improving to a great extent in terms of compliance, finance, this, that and all, GST regime coming in. It's just a matter of time in order to adapt to the situation, how fast we need to move it. If we are able to adapt, the health of the companies are improving, probably we are building the health of the elephant. Second thing, the environmental structure in terms of what are the thought processes that we are in. One is the energy conservation, how optimistic we are in terms of energy transition. Second, creating the infrastructure across in terms of the dedicated freight corridors, the national waterways utilization, in terms of the quadrilateral project, Gati Shakti. Lot of initiatives are being on which predominantly add up to an environment where it's just not an elephant to be moving in, it's like a herd of elephant which can pass through from one place to the other in a very fast manner. So these are all very positive trends that we are looking at and it is really going to make a very positive impact on all of us. As I said, let us work with a thought process of compliance getting driven to a very different level because this is going to be the base. When a freedom is given, freedom should be used within the aspect of the regulatory thing. Please work towards that and let's bring the Vikasit Bharat to the next level. I would conclude with that. Thank you.
Yeah, so most of the points are covered by Mr. Iyer and Sampath, sir. So the basic aspect which I need to cover is that the ideological shift which Indian exporters need to take up, because I was having a conversation with someone from China, and they said that if some project is given to China and if they say 15 days, it is delivered in 13 days. And in India, it's still the ideology that if something is given 15 days, it can take up to 20, 25 days and then it would be delivered across the world. So that ideological shift needs to be connected with what the government is seeking for the future of India. Of course, government is moving fast. I won't deny the fact. So there is a huge optimism across the nation, but there's still that ideological and mentality shift which needs to happen, and Indian exporters need to take care. Plus, that should also be enabled with the compliance part, which we all discussed over here, because the e-commerce is still a very gray area in which, so we also come across a lot of material being sent to various like exported out of India without any paperwork, or which are even come under the restricted category or prohibited category out of India. But still there are ways which Indian exporters find to get them out. So there is a strictness on the custom level which need to be developed, and the Indian mentality has to be changed, that the compliance has to be the forefront of the global movement for the Indian exporters. Yeah.
Yeah, just to summarize, I think, and since you took an example of China, right? Yes, China has been our benchmark in terms of how do we grow and be fast and efficient like China. One of the factors for doing that was, of course, the regulatory changes. In India, primarily regulatory changes do drive a lot of businesses. It makes it easy, makes it tough. A lot of these serves there, but there is a regulatory will, there is a government will which is been seen. And how do I measure that will? If you see the private equity investment which has happened in India, especially in this entire logistics, transportation and infrastructure space, tells you the will is there and it is in real and things are happening on the ground, right? That's the amount of private equity which has come in. Now that also tells us we are slowly moving towards the better, what do you call, the consumption part of it, growth part of it with respect to China. The second part is, of course, the businesses. Now, government is putting up the setup, they're giving you rules, regulations and all. But what are businesses doing? I would take an analogy of, let's say, the hospitality industry. Now, if you compare hospitality industry of India, which is one of the best, frankly, across the globe, right? But why are they best? It's primarily the customer service, right? Customers look at empathy, they look at customer efficiency. They are happy when the hotel knows more about them, their preferences and a lot of these things. Also, from a cultural background, we get a lot of people from foreign countries, different cultures. Our hotels have been very efficient and very have adapted themselves to work with all of these countries and the cultural norms, right? If I put an analogy here, it's like if I'm talking about customer service, efficiency part of it, I need a digital connection to give me the real insight, so I can tell the customer, sorry guys, this is what is getting delayed, this is the reason why it's delayed, we will look at some alternatives, right? A customer would be happy rather than keep asking you when is my delivery coming, and you have no idea or clue to give a real-time answer to them. Second is, of course, when it talks about cultural norms and all, in the hospital industry works very well in that. That's like your compliance from different countries. You should be on top of it if you are compliant or not, and that also gives you better business. Because if you are pitching to a customer that I'm going to be your supplier or vendor of choice, I have all these things figured out, right? I'm compliant because, again, Rituraj mentioned about new compliances coming, new countries bringing a lot of compliances. Am I compliant? Because at the end of the day, your customer brand gets impacted if such a small issue comes up, and then it's a big challenge for you, right? And hospitality industry has been very good at that. So I would say if customers in India also start benchmarking them with respect to customer service, as Mr. Sampath also mentioned, and that can only be done getting a real-time insight about the customer or the environment surrounding the customer, which will help, it's like called the customer delight, right? So that's something we can certainly match.
Thank you all of you. And before we move further, can we have a round of applause for the panel here? Now, the only bad thing which is there about moderation is to be restrictive on time. So we'll be taking maybe only one question and one answer from the panel if there is any. Yes, sir. You can tell your name, the company you are representing, and the question. If it is to an individual or to the panel itself. And then also you can get the answer to your short brief on everybody. There is a lot of knowledge here, and even after the session, you can talk with them, but we have to get ready for the next session here.
Hello, good afternoon to the panel. I am Anupam Tiwari. I am from the Ministry of Defence. Now we have spoken of cross-border logistics. We have spoken about payments. We have spoken about bringing transparency, etc., and digitization. Would like to know the view of the panel about CBDC. How do you think CBDC will be able to make an effect? CBDC is central bank digital currency, and RBI has already launched it in India, and so has all the major developed countries. Now this is going to affect into a lot of savings, lot of expedited payments, lot of transparency, and lot of so many other advantages. Do you foresee that CBDC can bring in an effect in the international logistics? Because the purpose basic behind CBDC is, of course, enabled on blockchain, bringing in immutability, integrity, expeditedness. That's all. Thank you.
So let me pitch in terms of the technology part, right? As you mentioned, there is a lot of work which will be required with fintech companies, not just local, global also. And again, it's an evolving landscape, right? You spoke about blockchain and all. Who is going to be the blockchain players? There are many players out there. From a technology perspective, the answer is we can integrate. So primarily, let's say SAP, right? SAP may not develop a technology, but any visibility player. So I was talking examples of the cross-border tracking and all, where we tie up with visibility players, right? So that insights from a regulation compliance perspective can come in with a visibility player, and it can be a bank or a fintech company whom you want to tie up with as a business, right? Those real-time insights can come in. And one of the reasons for this happening is, and this is again from a software provider, everything is moving on cloud in the software technology, right? It's easy to integrate, which was not there 15 years ago, to a lot of these third-party players. So all compliances you want to manage it, there may be a boutique partner, a fintech player doing that for you along with the government. And that's example we see with the GST norms. Government has created a GST system, but then there are connectivity things which has been given. A lot of insights are derived by third-party players with the data, right? So data would be there. That data needs to be presented in a manner which will help you being compliant with respect to the CBC. So technology is there for meeting these evolving needs, working with third-party players like the fintechs and all, and that's something which can be also a moving thing, but I think this is quite possible to handle all of these changes also.
So thank you everyone.
Thank you so much, moderator of the session. Very insightful discussion. Thank you so much, Anand. Can we take the questions offline, please? I'm afraid we're running about 30 minutes delayed, and we have been asked by our speakers of the next session who already arrived. We need to move on to our next session. We encourage the discussion, we encourage the conversation.
Hello.
We can take it offline.
Hello. Sir.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sure we have more discussions and more questions to ask. Maybe we can see if we can take one more. But in the meanwhile, networking lunch, networking break is a very good time to take some offline discussion. Thank you so much for being so kind and so patient. Once again, thanking our panelists. Maybe have a huge round of applause for all the panelists. And we have been indicated that our speakers for the next sessions are already here. Thank you. With that, we close the session on cross-border logistics insights. And thank you, moderator of the session, Mr. Rituraj Shailendra. We would like to present a memento to our esteemed panelists. May I request Ms. Radhika to kindly join us on stage and present a memento to Mr. Rituraj Shailendra for moderating the session so wonderfully. Thank you so much for conducting and concluding the session so well. Thank you so much. A huge round of applause for the moderator of the session, ladies and gentlemen. May we now present a memento to Mr. R. Sampath. Presenting a memento to Mr. R. Sampath. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for sharing not just your thoughts but also your experience. We also thank Mr. Anshul Mahindru. Thank you so much, Mr. Mahindru, for sharing your thoughts with us. Our heartfelt gratitude to Mr. Nikhil Kamat. Thank you so much, Mr. Kamat, for sharing your time, your thoughts with us. And a huge round of applause for Mr. Anand Iyer also. Thank you so much, Mr. Iyer, for sharing your time, your experience with us. May I now request all our members on the stage to kindly step forward for a group photograph. We wish to capture this moment in our cameras, keep it as a memory. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being so patient and a wonderful set of audience.